word. Now, I'd come from a very traditional church, so prophetic words were something completely left field. And I had someone say, you need to start going to people and telling them, I like your tie and I like your shoes. And I remember at the time thinking that this was a very strange thing to do. But, you know, when someone tells you to do it from the pulpit, you're like, well, clearly I've got to do that. But what the pastor said was, it's going to build something into you that actually puts courage inside of you. Now, obviously, we don't encourage other people to build into ourselves, but it's one of those things that actually happens. Now, I firmly believe that encouragement is the difference between someone making it and someone not. Because sometimes people can just get hit and hit. You know, we know what the storms of life are like, okay? And you don't know if your little comment of, hey, I just really appreciate how you do this, you don't know when it's going to make the difference that will keep them safe, okay? So I really want to encourage you to do that. But also, if people is something you're afraid of, you have no idea the impact when you go to someone and encourage them. It actually starts to show you that you're doing something. You're doing something in the kingdom that has value. You're building value into other people. And it actually starts putting a little bit of value back into yourself. So I really want to encourage you, get along and do that. Tell a checkout operator they've done a great job. Say thank you. Smile to them. My family is a retail family, so good Lord, give those people love. They need it very desperately. Actually, what I'm going to be sharing about is the storms of life, which is quite funny because that popped up this morning and I was like, did I tell them that I was doing that? No. So it's been a really stormy season for our family as well. And don't get me wrong, some of us really like storms. We love the dark clouds. We like the purple. You know, the glow that the trees get, they just kind of glow this really iridescent green. I love it. I love the drama of it. But we have 2 members of our family who can't handle it. Oh, actually 3, sorry. Our 2 dogs and my daughter. They don't like storms. Now, we can tell a storm is coming because Max is cowering and shaking, but this is long before we've heard the first thunder. He has an ability to sense it. He's got the heart of a chicken. So when we need to know if a storm is coming, we just check where Max is. If Max is in the house, it's like, oh, Lord, it's coming. And the question keeps coming up of late. It's, you know, when you talk to people and you think, is there anyone who is not currently going through a really hard time? And you start to get the sense that this is everywhere. Everyone's feeling this. And the question comes, what do we do when the storms of life threaten? What happens when you just keep getting dunked by wave after wave after wave? And I want to offer a picture of hope that God's been showing me lately. It's an encouragement that's actually been working to build a bit of strength into me after the waves keep hitting me a few too many times. I cannot tell if I'm saying this the right way. Maya Angelou reminds us in her famous poem that hope is not a fragile whisper. Hope is a fighter's stance. It has dirt underneath its fingernails. It grips onto something. It's not just this nice wishy-washy feeling, because wishy-washy does not cut it. When things get really hard, you actually need something that's going to make you grip on. So we're going to look at 2 passages in Mark today, 2 crossings of the Sea of Galilee. And if you'll allow me to geek out for a short time, I love weather. I did try to study climatology for a very brief period of time because I love clouds and I thought I'd get to look at them and go, this is a thing. It turns out that there's way more mathematics involved and my brain is not up for that. So I just get to enjoy the look of the pretty clouds and tell you that there are clouds in the sky. That's all I can do. The Sea of Galilee is noted for sudden and violent storms because there's cold air that sweeps down from the plateaus of Gaulanitis and the Haran and Mount Hermon through the ravines and the gorges, and they converge at the head of the lake where it meets warm air. And whenever you get cold air that meets warm air, you get a storm because of the instability. Now, the Bible tells us that the disciples were afraid, and given that 4 of these were seasoned fishermen, I think that really says a lot to us. So the passage is one that's right in the middle of Jesus ministering to the towns around him. He's speaking in the temple. He's giving the people the Beatitudes. He's teaching and teaching and teaching, healing all of those who were brought to him. And we're told that wherever he went, the crowds came to him. The disciples are witnesses to the feeding of the hungry, the casting out of the demons. And we can see that this was their apprenticeship. They're making mistakes, they're seeing victories, they are performing miracles that they take back in report to Jesus. And they're learning as they go and trying to keep up with the Messiah. So Mark 4:35 to 41 is when Jesus calms the storm. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Now, that's a key point I'm going to keep coming back to. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Don't you love how quickly we jump to accusation? So he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now, the first thing I want to note is that a very wise professor I once had said, Jesus specifically says, we are going to the other side of the lake. He does not say we are going out into the middle and then let's just see. Let's see what happens. We're winging it. So a Bible commentary on Mark 4 breaks this down to 3 basic questions. 1, we're drowning. How are you so calm right now? 2, why are you still afraid? Where is your faith? And 3, who just tells the sea to be calm? Who is this? And it's so gloriously human. It's exactly what we would do if that was us in the boat. The disciples didn't realise that their freak out would become a teaching point for future generations. So, let's just be thankful that the Bible is already written. Otherwise, our freak outs would be in there. Adrian Plass once talked about if they were still writing the Gospels, his would be the story of the cheese and the pickle or something else that's that ridiculous. So like any apprenticeship, this is a test for the disciples. How does faith in this new teacher work? It means that I go where he sends me. It means that I have to deal with my fears. And when we're being sent out and preaching in his name, what do we do when we come under storms ourselves? Now, many of you know that, some of you know that I trained as an actor. So now when there are learning lines, there are different stages of knowledge, okay? So you could go into theory of mind, but let me just tell you as an actor, there are stages where you know your lines. Now, there's the first one where the lines look vaguely familiar, but you don't actually know them. And all you need is someone to stop and say, "What's your line?" And you nearly pass out, or at least I do. Now, the second stage is where you know the basics, but as soon as they take the script away from you, you're drawing a blank and the director bursts into tears. The third is where, this is the dangerous one. You're bored with the lines and you think you know them, but you don't actually know them. It's a trap. You need to keep learning. Now, the fourth is when you can say them under pressure, but you're desperately scrambling in your brain for what the next one is. You may write cue words on the palm of your hand. I do this, so if I've got a big show, I will have words all up and down there that hopefully people don't see. Now, the last stage actually happens after the show is done. You know all of your lines without pressure. They come out like over breakfast. They come out constantly. And that's when you actually have it so far in your knowledge that you know it without having to think about it. Now, so the disciples are in the process of learning. So they have now experienced, they've been on a boat where Jesus was asleep, which was rude, and Jesus woke up and calmed the storm. So they've been there, they've seen that. The world that they grew up in was of a Jerusalem that had been rebuilt after the exile. Now, I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Theology, and I'm loving it. I never thought that would be the case, but I really do. But one of the realizations that I had, that 400-year period of silence before Jesus was born, that is the same distance as between us and Shakespeare. So we have Shakespeare's words, and we can recall facts about that time. But that gap between the exile and Jesus coming was actually only 400 years. It's such a short period of time. It's long enough to remember through their people what was going on. So these are people who have, for 400 years, been building back their national identity. These people had their faith in the second temple, in their sacrifices, in that one day a Messiah would come. And that period is sometimes referred to as the period of silence, or the intertestamental period, where there are no new prophetic voices. So teachers refer to the silence not as an abandonment, but a pause. It was a pause to reset. And it was creating a sense of anticipation and longing for the fulfillment of God's promises. And then 400 years later, a star appears in the sky and Jesus is born. And he's not what they expected. It's not Jewish leaders of Pharisees chosen. It's a bunch of people with normal jobs, not much education, getting their apprenticeships on the road as they walk with Jesus. So 2 chapters on, and we're now in the Gospel, in chapter 6 of Mark. Jesus teaches in his hometown. And the Bible tells us that they were offended by being taught by one of their own. If you've ever had to pastor in the church that you grew up in, you'll know the feeling. If only they'd known to look beyond what they knew. I'm wondering if there were a few head smacks. Jesus sent out the 12 again, driving out demons, healing the sick, and preaching repentance to the towns, just like he did before. Now, we're told that just after John the Baptist is killed by Herod, that the disciples came back to report to Jesus in Mark 6, verses 30 to 31. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." The people, however, follow them, because where there's Jesus, people follow. There's no rest, and Jesus has compassion on the crowd, recognizing that the people were like sheep who had no shepherd. Jesus' love and compassion for those who flocked to him is wonderful here. He loves us as flawed as we are. And we're reminded in Mark 6 that Jesus drew himself aside to pray and drawing strength from the Father while the crowds were hounding him. So in Mark 6, verse 45, Jesus walks on the water. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, where he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on the mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake again, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified, as you would be. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." And then he climbed into the boat with him and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran through the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. So I'm sure anyone who's actually been an apprenticeship or had an apprentice, you know that you have to repeat lessons. You have to go over them a few times. And it's not easy. And here the disciples are again out on a lake. The wind is against them again. Now they know, assuming they remember the lesson from chapter 4, that, on the manual on the apprenticeship with Jesus, that from their earlier experiences, if Jesus is in the boat, we're okay. However, this time Jesus isn't in the boat. So they can't wake him up and demand, and ask him, "Don't you care? Can't you make this quiet down?" They can't demand that he pay attention to them drowning. So what do? They do what they know. They strain against the oars. And from our perspective, we know what they don't, that just because they're out on the lake seemingly alone, it doesn't mean that God's unaware of the storm. After all, Jesus sent them to go across the lake to Bethsaida, not into the middle and wishing them luck. He sent them to the other side again, and they're out in the middle of the lake with the wind against them, probably wondering what the plan is this time. And it's not the same miracle this time. This time the Bible tells us that Jesus walked out on the lake to them and that it looks like he's going to pass them by, which, again, rude. It would feel that way. Scholars tell us that this is the same language they use when they discuss the glory of God passing by Moses when he was hidden in the cleft of the rock. It doesn't speak to God saying, "Oh, it's you, I didn't see you there." Instead, it talks about the same kind of encounter, the same kind of reassurance that Jesus is passing them by. It is I, and I am who I am. It's the same reassurance that he gives. It's the language used in the Bible where a holy God encounters the people with who he is. And this time Jesus climbs onto the boat with them, reassuring them that they aren't to be afraid, and the disciples are amazed. Again, exactly as we would be. You might think they'd be a bit less surprised. After all, they've just seen him feed 5,000 people. They've seen him raise a child from the dead and heal people with lifelong conditions. It's Jesus. He does this kind of thing all the time. But we would be surprised as well. Because what do we do when we're in a storm and he's not on the boat that we can see? He comes to us walking on water. He calms the storm with his presence. We may not see him, but he sees us. And the Bible tells us that their hearts were hardened because they didn't understand the feeding of the 5,000. They didn't understand God's provision. He's raised the dead. He's walked on water. They're in the presence of God right now, and they still don't understand. And we're all working out our own apprenticeship. That's one thing I'm very aware of. We're all coming into circumstances again and storms and go, well, where are you, God? And asking the same questions we asked last time. Maybe the storm lasts a bit shorter a time this time because we go, oh, you were with me in that previous one. Oh, you delivered me from that one last time. We're working out our apprenticeship. While salvation was bought for us by Jesus, we know that we are saved, we are being saved, and we will be saved. Jesus, the one perfect sacrifice for all time, for all sin. We've seen this happen over the space of 2 chapters, and they don't get it yet. But we know that they will. Because there's no way we would actually know about Jesus unless they had actually fulfilled what they were going to do. The disciples are the reason that the gospel spread. They succeeded. And I am very well aware of the fact that while we can preach about their failures, like, oh, look at them, they had doubt, I get very upset at that because, well, what do? I have specifically said to God, are you trying to kill me? And I think I have said I've had more doubtful moments and more temper tantrums than we've seen the disciples have, and yet I use them as a preaching point. So whenever I do that, I'm very well aware that the gospel would look very different if Cate was in it, because it would happen more often. There would be more things that people would go, she really should have known better. One of the hardest things I've ever had to process was the fact that some truly horrible things that happened in our family as we grew up. Jesus was with my family, even though we couldn't see him. We weren't alone. It didn't stop the storm. It didn't take away the impact of it. But we were not unseen. We were not alone, and there was hope. We just didn't see it yet. Hope is not passive, as I said in the beginning. Hope is clinging to the lessons that we've learned. It's going back over our apprenticeship again and again and kind of feeling a little bit smacked in the face with a wave every now and then. So I don't know what's been going on in your world recently, but our world is a pretty turbulent place. So it's pretty fair to say that most of us have been rocked and got a little bit seasick from time to time. Max Lucado says in his book, Unshakable Hope, it's not the absence of storms that sets us apart. It's who we discover in the storm, an unstirred Christ. We are building our lives on the promises of God. Because his word is unbreakable, our hope is unshakable. We do not stand on the problems of life or the pain in life. We stand on the great and precious promises of God. And I just want to leave you with that, because this is the encouragement that our souls need to keep going. This is the encouragement we need to give to each other, because when you are being smacked in the face by a wave, I'm not recalling the best Bible verses to use. And if you actually threw a Bible verse at me at that time, I'd probably get pretty stroppy. Okay, well, I'm still too busy trying to clear the water off my face. But the power of encouragement is actually reminding each other that whether God's in the boat or out of the boat, he sees us, he knows where we are, and he's actually got a way for us to get through. So I just want to pray together. So if you'd like to stand, shake your legs out if you need to. I basically get very stiff after a short time, so. Lord Jesus, thank you that you are with us in the storms. Lord, I thank you that the storms don't mean the absence of you. Thank you that you are present. Lord, I ask you, wherever people are feeling isolated, wherever people are feeling like they've just been whacked around a bit, Lord, bring your comfort, bring your peace, and Lord, bring your people around each other to encourage. Lord, I just thank you for the hearts that are standing. Thank you for the hearts that are standing and watching and waiting for what you're going to do. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, I ask your blessing on this house. I ask you for your blessing on the people as they go. Jesus, just have your way. Amen.
Thank you, Katie.